Kamala Harris is not a godsend, all right? You people didn't even like her 6 months ago. Now, all of a sudden, she's black female Jesus, the way Obama was black Jesus. And let me tell you something. He had a lot more going for him than Kamala Harris does. And not just as firsts go, but his type of campaigning, his type of persuasion, his charisma, okay? He was imbued with things that she is not. And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just a point of comparison. And her process fucked her also. There's a convenience in it, but it fucked her also. Because there are a lot of misgivings about her. There's an underlying feeling that she didn't get this the right way. She may not have won a primary. She didn't even make it to the first round of primaries when she did run. And that is both fair and unfair at the same time. But look, this idea of don't say anything bad about her because Trump, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. And it's not how you get to a better place. It's a relative assessment. She has negatives, so does he. Does he have more? Yeah. He also has a way more intense following. That's why this race is so tight. Now explain that to me. Unless you want to write off half this country as bigots, how do you explain it being so tight? Maybe you're not as right about everything as you think you are. Maybe you should be a little bit more open to the people that you disagree with. Maybe they're not all racists.
Do you agree that black men who are not voting for Harris and who didn't vote for you, as the pastor sees it, are misogynist? As he said, misogyny is still real in our community.
I would say, number one, I know it's a shock to everyone, but sexism remains real and a very pertinent issue. But I want us to be really clear that Kamala Harris is doing very well with black men. Black men are the second strongest cohort of Democratic voters. However, we do have to acknowledge that there is sexism, there is racism, there are challenges in our electorate. And that's why it's so important that Kamala Harris is going everywhere and talking to everyone. She respects voters, she meets them where they are, and she refuses to be told that she has lost a cohort, lost a community, simply because she's different.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about how the minority coalition of the Democrat Party is falling apart, okay? And what do I mean by the minority coalition? Well, I mean all of the non-white voters who typically vote Democrat en masse, okay? They vote Democrat at a 60, 70, 80, 90% clip if you're black, unfortunately. But it seems as if that is changing, okay, in this election, because a lot of these voters have realized the game from Democrats is that they trick so-called minorities into voting for them because of racism and bigotry from Trump and Republicans. However, they figured out that is a lie, right? That is not what the real issue is. That is not what people actually should be concerned about. What people should be concerned about are key issues like the border, the economy, inflation, foreign wars, things like that. That is what people are concerned about, okay? And this is why you have Trump getting more so-called minority support than ever before. And the polls just seem to be getting worse for Kamala Harris when it comes to so-called black and Latino voters. Take a look.
I'm Brooke Singman is here with the details. Hi, Brooke. Hi, good morning, guys. Yeah, former President Donald Trump continuing his election push today. He's making huge gains with traditionally Democrat voting blocs. So the former president is now leading the VP by 11 points with Latino voters, according to a new USA Today and Suffolk University poll. That same poll is showing Harris's support among black voters is reaching historic lows for a Democratic presidential nominee, with just 72% of likely black voters supporting the vice president. Meanwhile, 57% of voters do not believe Harris has done enough to explain her specific policies as she tries to distance herself from President Biden. Listen.
First of all, I will say that it is a metaphor that is meant to also describe my intention to embark on a new generation of leadership. And needless to say, mine will not be a continuation of the Biden administration. I bring to it my own ideas, my own experiences.
Yeah, so this is the reason why people are not voting for Kamala Harris, right? Why the minority coalition is falling apart, okay? Because Kamala Harris is a really, really, really bad candidate, which is essentially the argument that Chris Cuomo made at the beginning of this video, which is that Kamala Harris is not that great. And the mainstream liberal media deciding that instead of actually criticizing Kamala Harris and calling her out for being a bad candidate, they do butt Trump and blame bigotry and hate is probably one of the reasons why she is continuing to lose, okay? But that is what the media is doing. They're doubling and tripling down on this. And that's kind of what CNN is going to do here after getting a reality check from a black Trump supporter out in Michigan, an auto worker who has decided to vote with his brain instead of his emotions and to support Trump. Take a look.
Signs of the season, Macomb County, Michigan. These suburbs just north of Detroit are a blue-collar bellwether. Joseph Knowles about to send a message, about to defy his union leadership, about to vote Republican for president for the first time, about to vote for Donald Trump.
And at this point now, I'm desperate. So I'm willing to try anything right now to make sure that I can fulfill my responsibility and to take care of my wife and kids. That's all I care about.
Knowles is a union auto worker, one of 1,100 just laid off by Stellantis, the parent company of Chrysler Jeep. He blames corporate greed the most, but doesn't stop there.
The second blame, I will put it on Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Why? Because of the EV mandates. I thought the Democratic Party was for the working class, people, the average Joe like me. That's what I thought.
There are more American auto jobs now than at any point of the Trump presidency. But auto workers supporting Trump here echo his attacks on Biden's clean energy incentives and his claim illegal immigrants are to blame for lost jobs.
But if you do it the wrong way, I think you should get round up and just thrown out. I have no problem with that because it jeopardized my way of providing for my kids if they take jobs.
Knowles waves off friends who call Trump racist, says he doesn't believe Vice President Harris is up to the job, and he spars with family members who say he should stay a Democrat.
Oh, man, I took it from my mom, from my auntie, cousins, my sister. They came at me.
Bill Govier is a 30-plus year union worker at Ford, and he has this side business cleaning car underbodies. When we first visited 4 months ago, he was a fan of Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, he will cast his third ballot for Trump.
RFK joining Trump effectively, I couldn't script it any better the way I would like it to be. I love the idea of Donald Trump being the commander-in-chief. I love the idea of how Donald Trump handles the nefarious characters in the world.
Govier believes more than half of UAW members at his Ford plant will vote Trump. He says Harris laughs too much, and he can't take her seriously.
So what is it? You're the incumbent who wouldn't do anything different, or are you the underdog that wants change?
And he says count this early vote in Wayne County for Harris. And count Tonya Rincon as a Democrat who long ago lost patience with Ford co-workers who shrug off Trump attacks on immigrants, on judges, on vote counts, on critics.
There's a lot of people that they just take the crazy with Trump as it's baked in the cake and we're just willing to ignore it. Whereas if we heard that out of our loved ones, we'd be like, okay, Grandpa, it's time to take your keys.
Rincon just retired from the Wayne Assembly Plant and is helping the UAW register and turn out voters. She says her June bet that her local would split 50-50 in a Trump-Biden race is still about right, with Harris now atop the Democratic ticket.
There's a little bit more enthusiasm among some of my female coworkers. A couple of my male coworkers are pretty ambivalent about Harris. We may have lost a tiny margin of support because sexism's a real thing, you know. They're just like, you know, I'm not sure she can do it. I don't think the country's ready for a female president.
Walter Robinson Jr. says there's more energy since the switch to Harris, but also more offensive chatter on the assembly line.
They have been saying some very disparaging things about the vice president, things about how she rose up through the ranks and some of the things that she might have done. They only had to say that to me once before they understood they can't say that to me again.
Well, Congressman, this is what John King found during a trip. This is what he claims he found during a trip to a Detroit auto factory. Check this out.
On the factory floor, they say there's more racism and sexism now. Before it was just Biden's too old. Now the workers who support Harris say they're hearing more racism and more sexism.
Okay, that's the narrative they're using to explain the lack of support for Harris among working class people, racism and sexism.
No, it's just a joke. And the media, they're the number one culprits in all of this. Because for the first 40 to 50 days of her campaign, instead of holding her accountable like you would any other presidential candidate, they treated her like she was a Hollywood actress. We all remember when she wasn't saying anything to anybody, and they thought it was the greatest thing ever. Now that the American people's skepticism has turned to rejection, this is where the media goes. But the media, like the Democrats, are the reason why nobody trusts them. Because instead of looking at the reality on the ground with wide open borders and massive increases in prices for every good and service, what do? They want to blame shift. They want to deflect.
Yeah.
But hey, that's fine by me. That means Kamala Harris is losing.
Yeah, I personally think that's what's happening, right? I think that Byron Donalds is spot on. The fact that they just continue to blame racism and sexism just means that Kamala Harris is losing, okay? And I think that she's losing by a much larger margin than what the polls suggest, because historically speaking, the polls have been off when it comes to measuring Trump's support.
After a surprise Donald Trump win in 2016,
the polling missed the 2016 election outcome.
And a surprisingly close Joe Biden win in 2020.
A lot of folks are waking up and saying, why were these seeming to be so off?
They do manually dial.
Quinnipiac University's poll director Doug Schwartz and others like him have tweaked their methods to better predict who will win in November.
How do you think about that in terms of what happened there and what you're doing now?
Some pollsters are thinking it's because they missed the Trump voter. And then for us, we don't feel like we missed reaching the Trump voter. We got the Trump voter. They were in our poll, but they didn't tell us how they would vote. This time around, we're better prepared.
So they're rephrasing their questions.
If the election for president were being held today,
doing everything they can to reach those who are hard to reach.
Our motto is we try hard to reach the hard to reach people.
Here's why that's important. These are the poll averages right now in all the battleground states. If those polls are off the same way they were in 2016 and 2020, Donald Trump is in great shape. But these poll errors don't always happen in the same direction. If they're off by the same amount, but this time underestimating Democrats, this is what those states would look like.
Yeah, so I love how the mainstream liberal media goes out of their way to attempt to use outdated polls to show the current averages in the swing states, right? Or they will selectively use some liberal media poll that shows that Kamala Harris is doing better than she's actually doing, right? I mean, I like to use the averages, right? I don't like to use any one poll unless the poll has a history of being extremely accurate. Like, for example, the Atlas Intel poll. That poll has Trump a couple of points in the national vote and winning the election in the Electoral College. I think that there's good reason to use that poll considering how accurate it was in 2020 and 2022. But I think the safe thing to do really is to use the averages, right? And if you look at the averages and assuming that the poll's actually right this time around, which the pollsters claim that, hey, we're going to get it right, okay? We have figured out how to poll the shy Trump supporter, right? We figured that out. We got it, okay? If the polls are correct, if they are accurate, Trump is winning, right? And he's winning in a landslide, okay? That's what's happening. Now, if the polls are off, like they were in 2016 and 2020 in regards to underestimating Trump support, as you guys just saw there, Trump is winning by even more of a landslide, okay? And it's at the point now where Trump is up 1.2 percentage points on average among the swing states, okay? And this lead is increasing as we get closer to the election. Really bad sign for Kamala Harris. When you look at the national polls, okay, you look at a popular vote, which really doesn't matter that much. Kamala Harris, her lead is decreasing, right? This is why I personally think that it is likely that Trump not only is going to win all of the swing states, but he's probably going to win a popular vote as well, too, okay? Which, at that point, if Trump wins the popular vote, then the mainstream liberal media and the left, they can't complain about, oh, where's Trump? He didn't win the popular vote. We got to get rid of the Electoral College. It's anti-democratic. Trump actually lost, right? This is what they'll say, right? This is exactly what they'll say. But, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Kamala Harris clearly is losing momentum. And in order to explain this, these people have defaulted to accusations of bigotry and hate, right? And, you know, the more that they do that, I think the worse it's going to get. Because for whatever reason, somebody hasn't told Kamala Harris, you might want to come up with an actual good answer in regards to separating yourself from Joe Biden. But she can't do it, right? Because, again, instead of acknowledging that she's just not good, that she's bad, as Chris Cuomo pointed out, that, hey, this woman couldn't even win the Democrat Party primary. She didn't even get one vote. She dropped out before a vote was cast. She is illegitimate as a candidate because she was installed via coup, okay? And she's not very good at interviews. Instead of acknowledging the actual reality, no, they ignore reality and they say, but Trump. The problem is that but Trump is not working, right? But Trump is actually backfiring. But Trump has resulted in Trump being the most popular that he's ever been, right? He has more support than he's ever had before. And the crazy part is that this is among a more diverse group of voters, okay? The coalition that is now coming over to the Republican Party has never been more diverse, racially speaking, than what's happening right now, right? That's the crazy part about it, okay? This is not a white lash, which is what you would think would be happening if you listen to the mainstream media. Well, there's a white lash that is happening, and more whites are coming out and vote for Trump. That's actually not the case. It's actually more so-called people of color. It's funny how that works. So, yeah, there's a possibility that the pollsters could be underestimating Kamala's support. I have heard people put out theories that there is a silent Kamala Harris support out there. But, you know, I personally just don't think that is very likely, right? I just don't. I think ultimately she just doesn't have that much support, right? That's just the reality of the situation. I think that the support that she does have, I think a lot of it has been manufactured by the media. I think a lot of it is artificial. I think a lot of it is wishful thinking. And I think people are now seeing through the hype and they're understanding that, hey, you know what? When it comes to the key policies, the key issues, the results, okay, the Biden-Harris results versus the Trump results, the choice is clear, right? I mean, Trump clearly is the better candidate, and that's why you're saying polls break in favor of Trump going into the last stretch of this election season. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.